Hey GBA fans, it's your friend Choice CJ here, and welcome back to another week of D-League Season number 4. This is week 10, the second to last week, and if you did not see my match last week, I do recommend you guys go check it out. It was versus our good pal Zalzo, aka Iron Flash Gaming. I'll spoil it for you guys in case you did miss it, or you can pause and watch that and then come back to this. But we did catch a pretty tough 5-0 loss. But as I mentioned in that video, he had promised to 6-0 me earlier as the season was starting, so the fact that we did not get 6-0'd is sort of a victory in and of itself. But I digress. We're going to try to bounce back from that loss versus our good pal Deebs this week. Deebs is the coach of the Calgary Flame Wheels, and as you can see, his team is Lando T, Mega Charizard X, Superior, Nihilego, Togekiss, Porygon 2, Lucario, Sneasel, Vaporeon, Rotom, Ghost Form, Rotom Spook, if you prefer, and Golisopod. So, definitely has some spooky threats. Lots of setup options between Lando, Zard, Lucario. Even things like SD Sneasel, Nasty Pot Togekiss can be annoying. Nihilego with Choice Scarf and Beast Boost is very difficult to deal with. So a lot of defensive threats. Offensive threats, but he also has defensive threats, like the P2, which is really hard to break, the Vaporeon, which is really hard to break. So I have to be very careful in my prep and make sure that I don't auto-lose to one of those two bonds. And then I also want to try and have some safety nets versus his potential setup sweepers. And so that's how we sort of team built this week. We wanted to play relatively safe, I guess, just because there's a variety of ways that Deeps can beat us. And so with that, let's just hop on into the team builder real quick. First up, we do have what I think is my best win con in this game. Simple Calm Mind Roost. Lottie is actually not Size Shock, it is Ice Beam. I changed this at the last minute. So he doesn't really have anything to deal with this combination of moves. Technically, Lucario does wall Dragon Pulse and Iron Beam to some, Ice Beam to some extent because of its Steel typing. But Lucario is not really a bulky mon. So, I don't think that really counts. Like, I should still 2-hit KO with Dragon Pulse. And unless I'm whittled, so like a lot, he's not going to be able to one-shot me with one of his moves. He, like, you know, Meteor Mash shouldn't be able to one-shot me if he wants to run that. There's lots of things that this can set up on. A Superior, like, if it doesn't have any boosts, and if it's lacking Dragon Pulse, we can potentially set up on that. P2 lacking Toxic, we can set up on that. Lando, we can kind of set up on. It depends on if it has Swords Dance or not. But, I mean, if he Swords Dances as we go for Calm Mind, we just immediately kill it with Ice Beam, so that's not a huge deal. Nihilego, if it's locked into something that doesn't really hit Lottie that hard, like Power Gem, we can potentially roost up on that and Calm Mind up on that. The list goes on and on and on. So, I think it's pretty sturdy, this game. Sneasel is kind of the biggest threat versus it because it can hit it with Icicle Crash, which would do a ton of damage. But we have some relatively good solutions for Sneasel, so you know, we can sort of rely on those options if the time comes. Next up, we have a Choice Scarf Terrakion. So we're running double dual stab, if that makes sense. Reason being, so I wanted a Choice Scarfer to be able to revenge kill +1 Zard and also revenge kill Nihilego, because Nihilego can be spooky if it's got a Choice Scarf as well, or if he runs one of those beast boosting sets where it gets boosts in speed. That's definitely scary. We should be able to wreck that thing with close combat pretty easily. And then so for Stone Edge and Rock Slide, it's just a matter of trying to select a move that is a little bit more likely to hit. And then the reason we're running double Fighting Stab is, one, because we didn't really need any other coverage. I could have run Earthquake, but I'm not really bothered by missing out on Earthquake coverage. It doesn't really net any KOs that we can't already get with our stabs. And then on the off chance that he's running a P2 that has download and gets a defense boost, Sacred Sword should do a little bit more than close combat to P2. So that was kind of the thought process there. We have just enough speed on this thing to outspeed a max speed Jolly Zard. And yeah, it's just got good stab versus his team, so it's pretty reliable this week. Next up, we've got a Subtoxic Raikou. I think this is a very good Mon because he doesn't really have many good Toxic switch-ins. I don't even remember what his Steel type is off the top of my head. The reason is because he doesn't have one. But then he has Nihilego, which I guess switches in. But, like, we could potentially just sub up on that a few times and, like, get rid of a lot of its PP, because I don't remember exactly how much PP something like Power Gem has. Let's see, Power Gem. Okay, it has a ton. Alright, so forget that. Less of an option, but, you know, we can be annoying to it. And we can always Volt Switch out if it comes in and then go into Keys or go into Swampert. But yeah, Subtoxic just very good this week. Running max HP, max speed to speed tie with good pal Sneasel. I think this is pretty good this week. Next up, we've got an Aguave Berry Klefki. I've shown that I like these 50% berries on Klefki quite a bit. Running Magnet Rise, Foul Play, Play Rough, and Thunder Wave. Foul Play is just to hit certain setup mons very hard, like Lando. If we can get it versus a Lando, we can click Magnet Rise and dodge the ground type moves that it has, then we can retaliate with Foul Play. If somehow Zard comes in and we T-Wave it, we can go for a Foul Play versus it. We should outspeed as long as it's unboosted. But yeah, otherwise just Foul Play and Play Rough is pretty decent for the majority of his team. Thunder Wave is just insurance versus Zard or Superior or something like that. And Magnet Rise is there as anti-Lando. We're pretty SPDF on this spread. I think this might be the exact same EV spread from last week. But yeah, this is just a general nice switch into Superior, Sneasel, things like that. Togekiss, it switches in very well on. So that's the Klefki set. Next is Swampert. We're running a special set. The main reason being I don't want to get baited by a Will-O-Wisp Zard. Shoutouts to Ultra Player for suggesting it. Stealth Rock's Roar, Scald, Earth Power. Roar, again, is just to prevent certain setup shenanigans from something like Lando or Charizard. But otherwise, you know, this hits most of his team relatively hard. I guess it doesn't hit Golisopod super hard, but Golisopod luckily isn't as bulky on the special side, and with Scald, we do have that chance to burn. And we don't have to do a ton of damage to Golisopod, right? We just need to, if we have up rocks, it already switches in on 75%, and then if we can do like 25% with Scald, and then we will switch him out. And because we are most likely outspeeding Golisopod, we don't even need to necessarily knock it out, you know, knock it into emergency exit range with one Scald. We can do it with two. Or we can go for Earth Power if we want the damage. So, pretty straightforward set. Rocky Helmet, nice for getting chip on U-turn mons like Lando. And then last but not least, we have a pretty good set this week. Subtoxic protects Suicune. I think this has the potential to wreck his team if either Superior is eliminated or if it does not have like any non-coverage besides Leaf Storm. Like if he's got Giga Drain or if he's got Dragon Pulse or something, it'll be a little bit harder. But still, like without boosts, I think we can potentially take that on with Sub Protect. Yeah, it's just he doesn't have many good ways to break it besides Superior. He has Rotom, but like Rotom is sort of meh. I'm not that worried about it. I think it's a very good win con in this game if we play it right. So that's it for the team. Let's now flash on over into the battle. And as you can see, Deeps has brought Lando, Togekiss, Golisopod, Superior, Rotom, and Porygon 2. So he left a lot of his threats on the bench, I'm not going to lie. Like Sneasel especially, I think, was a pretty big mon for him to try and deal with my team, especially Lottie. It outspeeds or speeds ties everything, so that was a bit of a surprise. A pleasant one, of course. He doesn't have the Zard, which is really spooky. I guess I have a couple of bulky mons, and I have my Tarak, which can be a pretty good Scarfer. So, like, I guess I understand, but it's just because it applies so much pressure. Even if it doesn't sweep, I can understand. But I would have thought, hey, he would bring it. I guess I can understand, though, him being on the bench. And, yeah. Togekiss can be pretty annoying. Superior is definitely spooky. Porygon 2, I want to be very careful not to get wrecked by that thing. That's why I have Toxic on both Raikou and Superior, or not Superior, and Suicune. Hopefully we can make that work. So anyway, in terms of matchup at a turn 1, I go to lead Swampert. I led Swampert last week because it was pretty safe versus the majority of Zazu's team. I think it's pretty safe versus the majority of Deebs' team. The only things I'm going to be a little bit afraid of are Superior lead, of course, or potentially a Rotom lead going... Well, I guess the Rotom lead doesn't even matter because I'm special. I was going to say, like, Will-O-Wisp could be annoying, but otherwise, because I'm special, Will-O-Wisp doesn't really bother me. So yeah, overall good lead. And Rocks is really nice this game. Not only does it hit 2 mons super effectively, he doesn't have a single rock resist on the team. That's also important to note for late game with potentially getting a Terrakion sweep. If I can channel my inner A drive and hit 6 stone edges in a row, we can try and make that work. He doesn't have any mons with pressure, so it's not going to reduce the number of stone edges that I have. But all that said, let's just plop right on into this game. And hopefully we can blow through it because I do need to leave pretty soon. But yeah, good luck, have fun, Deebs. Deebs is a really chill guy. He's really down to earth. He's like the only person who's as old as me in the league. So he and I have a special bond because of that. Anyway, Deebs does lead with his Lando versus my Swampert. And I'm expecting him potentially to set up rocks or just switch out because this is not a great matchup for him. He does just go for U-turn. And so the damage does suggest that he's pretty offensively invested. So it's just a question of whether he's like a Z move or if he is Choice Scarf or something like that. I do just get up my rocks. And he does go for the Defog to get them away right away. I go for Scald just to sort of scout the damage. And it does a decent chunk. So it might not be bulk invested, but he does show the leftovers. And I'm going to go for rocks again. Because I'm thinking he might not have Hidden Power Grass if he has shown Defog, but indeed he does. So probably then his last 2 moves are Dual Stab, and that means he doesn't have anything like Pain Split or Will-O-Wisp. So good information. A little bit of a bummer that I lost some HP on my Swampert, but I was willing to do it just because the if Lando has U-turn, it probably is not set up. He didn't bring the Zard or the Lucario. So I don't necessarily need my Swampert, I just need to try and get up rocks with it. But in any case, P2 is going to end up coming in versus my Raikou. I brought in my Raikou on a predicted Defog from the Rotom. And this puts me in a good position to go for Subtoxic. One thing we did notice about this Porygon is that it is neither download nor trace, which means that it is analytic. So this Frustration is going to be powered up. The fact that he's Frustration instead of Try Attack as well is very annoying for me, especially versus my Raikou, because Raikou is of course a lot bulkier on the special side than on the physical side. So being an analytic set with Frustration makes sense versus potential Calm Mind Raikou. When the sub went up, I'm sure that he was maybe fearing the sub or Calm Mind to some extent, but it's not going to be our set. I think Subtoxic can handle the Frustration a little bit better. But still, it's a nice bring on his end, and it's kind of annoying to deal with. A Try Attack from non-analytic P2, it might not break Raikou's sub because I am max HP. But in any case, we duel a little bit versus this Rotom. I had a chance to Toxic it when I had the sub up, but I didn't think he would leave it in to stay Toxic. So that was my bad. I definitely could have gotten the Toxic off on this thing. I go into Keys, and does a pretty good chunk of damage. I'm not sure that going into Keys was necessarily the best play, but I didn't have a better switch in to Shadow Ball, besides maybe sacking off Swampert. But getting Swampert, keeping it in the back for a little bit of extra Rocky Helmet chip could be nice later in the game. And I could always go for rocks versus someone like P2 or Golisopod. The Togekiss comes in on my Keys, and I notice that's not leftovers. So I'm thinking it's potentially choiced in some way. Unfortunately, I end up going into Raikou. Now, having a Choice Scarf on Raikou isn't necessarily the worst, but because I'm a Subtoxic set without much attack investment, I'm not nearly as useful as I otherwise might be. So really nice prep on his part there, going with the Trick. Probably should have seen that coming. Like I anticipated perhaps the Choice set, but what I didn't anticipate as well was the Trick. Raikou was like a good middle ground play in my mind because if he went for T-Wave, I'm immune to that. And there's like pretty much nothing he can baton pass into that really threatens Raikou besides like a Scarf Lando. But in any case, he gets the P2 in. I make a kind of a risky play here. I am anticipating the Frustration, and so I choose to go into my Terrakion. He makes a God play and predicts that and goes for the Psychic, and so it's not only analytic boosted, but it's crit boosted. And we're left with essentially no health on our Terrakion, so not a great switch overall. Maybe I could have gone into Lottie, but I just didn't know what the P2's full set was at this point, and so I didn't want to switch into Lottie and take a potential Toxic, because Lottie is still a win con in this game unless it gets Toxic. I'm able to eliminate the Rotom with a Stone Edge. I go for another Stone Edge versus this Lando, and I don't hit it. There's a couple of annoying things here. The first annoying thing is that I can't confirm that it is an uninvested, like an uninvested defensive Lando. Like getting the damage from Stone Edge would have revealed that to me. And then the crit allowed him to go for the U-turn. If he hadn't gotten the crit with the Psychic, he would have been probably forced to go for EQ, which means that I could have much more safely gone into my Lottie and potentially done annoying things that way. But I digress. We are able to get off a Toxic on this Togekiss, and we're going to just end up stalling this thing out with our Suicune here for the most part. I was a little surprised for him to stay in. I kind of thought that the Lando would come in, which is why I went for the Toxic. I guess HP Ice would have been a decent play as well. But because that hits the Togekiss for a little bit of damage as well as hitting Lando, and it hits Superior if he wanted to go into Superior, which is otherwise a pretty reasonable check to Raikou. But I went for Toxic. Like, getting Toxic off on any of those 3 mons would have been okay. But yeah, we're just going to sub and protect. He's shown that he has Flamethrower. He's shown that he has Dazzling Gleam. He's shown that he has Air Slash. So that's great for us. It means he has no recovery. What I'm actually going to do in a few turns here is I'm going to, after sub and protecting, I'm going to go into my keys. Because I am the Guava Berry on the keys, I want to try and come in on a resisted hit and get healed up there. Having the keys around at a good amount of HP is going to make it a good pivot for Superior, a good pivot for Lando, things like that, because I am packing the Magnet Rise, of course. Yeah, so this is the turn that I'm going to do that. I figure that this is the turn that Togekiss is going to go down to Toxic damage. So we take 30 HP, you know, a little less than 20% from that Dazzling Gleam, get up to about 55%. And we're going to cross our fingers, hope that it goes into the Toxic, and it does not quite go down. So a little bit of a bummer, but I think it's going to work out okay because I can go into my Lottie on the predicted Flamethrower and take not a lot of damage. I am a nearly max HP Lottie, and luckily he didn't predict that switch, and his Togekiss is finally going to go down. And so now I've got my Lottie in here, and he goes hard into Golisopod. So this definitely suggests that a first impression is coming my way. My plan is just to go into my Swampert, sack it, and try and do a little bit of Rocky Helmet damage to this thing. And we're also going to see that this Golisopod is Life Orb. So we've done about 25% to this Golisopod already, which is not too bad. And now I can go back into my Lottie and I can go for a Dragon Pulse and threaten it out. I potentially could have gone for Calm Minds there, but like I figured P2 was his response, right? Like Superior is not really a great play, and Lando doesn't really take Dragon Pulse that well. So like if he's going to go into P2, I figure it's better just to get the damage off and force him to potentially recover. And that's what I was expecting here when I went into keys. He actually goes for Foul Play, which does maybe like 15% damage or so. And now he's really low. Now he is forced to spam Recover, and I'm just going to spam Play Rough. Because basically he either has to go into something else, or like he's going to spam Recover till he dies, or he just has to give up, go for a little bit of chip damage with the Frustration on me, and then die to Toxic. So Keys is just going to try and get the kill here. We got this thing at like 55%, which is pretty good. And then he's going to go into his Superior as I go for another Play Rough. I missed the Play Rough, which is a major bummer, but I am able to follow up with the Thunder Wave, and so this is going to make the Superior much easier to revenge kill. He's going to go for a Leaf Storm, and does a chunk of damage. It gives him, of course, that +2 boost, which means that my Keys is now going to be killed by the next Leaf Storm. I go for a second Play Rough, and I miss again. So this is really unfortunate, because like it's kind of the same situation with the Lando. I don't know what spread this thing has, but what it turns out being is that this is a very offensive SERP. He does have the Glare. Like, Glare on this is actually really smart. My best like default switch into SERP is probably Lottie. And so if I bring in Lottie on a SERP and he goes for Glare, he can then like two-shot me with a potential Dragon Pulse. I go, like, because of the way that this is played out, I feel like my only play is to go into Suicune and hope that he doesn't have that Dragon Pulse coverage, and I can just stall him out of Leaf Storms, which is even easier due to the fact that I am faster because of his paralysis. But he does have the Dragon Pulse, puts me in a very tough spot. So I have to sack my Keys. I don't want to lose my Coon. I have to go into Lottie, go for Ice Beam. Ice Beam with always 2 shots. Based on this damage, this again suggests that this is a pretty offensive SERP. And I basically just have to hope that he gets full parried. And it does not end up happening. He gets a little bit of recovery from leftovers, and I have 1 Mon left. That is Suicune. Is Suicune going to be able to go the distance? Not sure. He is at +6 now, so all he needs to do is go for Leaf Storm and take me out. But again, he's in a little bit of a tricky spot. He doesn't know if I'm going to sub-protect, whatever. Maybe going for some sub-protect shenanigans here was the play, because I could eventually get Superior to catch a paralysis. But the problem is, the more that I sub-protect, the more that he gains leftovers recoveries. And I don't have Calm Mind or anything, so it's not like I can boost to try and do more damage to Superior. Because he's already paralyzed, I can't Toxic him. So, like, the best play to me did seem just to do as much, go for Scald and do as much damage as possible. He is going to go now into this Lando. And because he is looking pretty offensive, it's not looking likely that we're going to be able to survive this EQ. He does go for it, and as you're about to see, this Suicune is going to go down. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to catch a 3-0 loss to our good pal Deebs. So, it was a good game. I was pretty impressed with the prep on Deebs' part. The Trick Togekiss was really smart. The Porygon 2 being prepped for Calm Mind Raikou was great. Golisopod as being a anti-Lottie check was pretty good. Superior with Glare and Dragon Pulse was nice prep. But I told him after the match, like, hey, you played really great and prepped really great. Your best part of prep was taking away the keys, glasses. Like the fact that it couldn't freaking see and hit his play roughs was probably your best move of the battle, which is like not fair because like Deebs earned the W. But if I could have gotten just a little bit of damage off onto Superior, that would have put it in range of being revenge killed to Lottie. I would have either had my my keys still or my Raikou. I wouldn't have had to make those sacks. And it's true that in that situation it was 4-4. My Lottie, Raikou, Klefki, and Suicune versus his Lando, SERP, Porygon, and Togekiss. No, not Togekiss, Golisopod. Like, he could have preserved SERP and then gone back into something, like, he could have gone into Golisopod. But, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, so even if he went into any of those Mons, like, if he goes into P2 cannot threaten Lottie with the set that it has. It doesn't have Toxic. It does have Foul Play, which is annoying, but I feel like I could set up on that. If he goes into Lando on the Ice Beam, he dies immediately. Golisopod, I don't think is bulky enough to take a Dragon Pulse, or sorry, an Ice Beam from Lottie. So, like, he could have preserved the SERP and still had to do annoying stuff in the game. But, in that situation as well, like, SERP would then have to come in and it wouldn't have the boosts anymore. Like, the fact that it was able to keep those boosts, it had +4 boosts by the time I got my Kun in. It put me in a really bad spot. So the play rough doing like 25-30% damage would have put it in range of Ice Beam, and I feel like the game could have played out a little differently. And that doesn't really speak. That is leaving out the crit on the Terrakion, things like that, which were not huge like by themselves, but were just generally annoying. Deebs understood that it was a bummer, but I hope he knows that he deserved the W, because he really did a great job in prep and played well too. So shoutouts to him for a nice match. We're unfortunately going to drop to 3-7 on the season. We're going up against Goldoa Dragon, who is the top surprise of the GBA D-League this season. He is locked in for playoffs, and we are locked out of playoffs. So we don't even really get the opportunity to play spoiler, but I do want to catch the W just so that we can end on a high note. And then Tom will feel more inclined to invite me back for the next D-League season. Although I feel like I earned my return invite because I do all of his graphics. So that should count for something. Tom, if you're listening, I love you, pal. Remember me. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed that battle, make sure you drop a like and leave a sub so that way you can stay up to date on all of my latest and greatest Pokemon and gaming action. And until the next time, I will see you guys later.